In this video, you'll learn how to read an image file using the file input stream and then write it back out again using the file output stream. I'll see you in a moment. Okay, some key concepts you'll learn in this video. The images that we read are read byte by byte using the file input stream. And writing images uses the file output stream. Both of these write using a buffer for handling these with a byte array. The byte arrays and why we use them, well, both the file input stream and the file output stream use a byte array for buffering how the image files will be read and wrote to. And typically, any type of binary file, like images, videos, movies, sound, so forth, you have to read them byte by byte. The byte array is a sort of read delimiter for determining how bytes will be read at each iteration. Now, the byte array size that we're going to use for buffering is 4096, which is a fairly typical chunk to read at each iteration. That size limit really only has adverse effects on older machines, and we use 4096 because it's a power of 2. Let me give you an example. The seemingly awkward chunk size of 496 is used because it's a power of 2, and reading and writing with bytes requires a power of 2. The table here you see demonstrates a rather large list of possible power of 2 numbers. For our program, we'll stick with a common memory page size of 4096. You'll notice in this video that we code using an offset parameter, and you might wonder about that. In our code for writing out the image, we use an offset of 0 because we want to write starting at 0 for the first byte. Okay, let's jump into it. Okay, so let's open up IntelliJ and click on Create New Project. In the New Project window, make sure that the SDK is set to Java 13. Then click Next. We'll leave the Create Project from Template blank. Click Next. And then we'll call this project File Input Output Example. And we'll click Finish. Now, in order to make this work properly, we're going to copy an image file into our project in a moment. But let's go ahead and create our class, and we'll call this Image Copier. And for our image copier, we're going to need an image. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy in a picture I have of myself into the project. And you could do the same with any image that you would like to use. So basically just right click on the source and click paste to paste your image in. And here we have an image of myself that I'll be using. Okay, so in our image copier, we need to do a couple of things. First of all, we're going to create our public static void main method. And you can do that in IntelliJ by typing psvm and then tab. Then we're going to create a couple of public static, private static constants. So private static final. And the first one we're going to create is a buffer object, which we'll use in a moment. And we'll call this our buffer. And this is going to equal 4096. Next, we're going to create a reference to our image and a reference to the output image. So we'll again private static final string, and we'll call this image path, and we'll just put that in quotes for right now. And then we'll create a second one, exactly the same, but this is going to be our output image path. So output image path. Now to get a reference of the image in IntelliJ, it's very easy. Just right click on the image that you've copied in and go to copy path. And in our instance, we're going to use the absolute path. So now we'll come over here, we'll paste that in. And then I'm going to paste it in again as well here, but at the end, I'm going to put output to signify that we have a different output file. Now this file doesn't exist yet, but this is what we're going to create and write to. Okay, so we have our public static final constants available. So let's go ahead and start writing some code. What I'm going to do is create an input stream variable, and I'm just going to call it is. And this is going to equal a file input stream. Now, input stream is a interface, and the file input stream, it implements the interface of input stream. So we'll say file input stream, and the file input stream, it will take in its constructor method, it will actually take a string, a file, or a file descriptor. So because it takes a string, we're just going to go ahead and pass in our constant for our image path. And then we're going to come down and use the output stream. And we'll call this OS. And this is going to use a file output stream. And you guessed it, we're going to use the output image path. Now, you'll notice that IntelliJ seems to be complaining, saying that there's an unhandled exception for file not found. So we'll take care of that in a moment. But the way we're going to do that is we're going to wrap this in a try with resources. Okay, so we'll say try. We'll use the parenthesis, and we'll come down here and put a closing parenthesis, and then our curly bracket. And then down below, we're actually going to say catch, and we're going to catch an IO exception. Okay, we'll just tab that over. Now we have try with resources is basically what this type of try catch is. Now we have our try set, and so next we need to consume the input stream, this file input stream of bytes. And you have to do that by declaring a byte array of a particular size. And so we're going to call this byte array our buffer. Actually, we're going to call it our image buffer. And this is going to equal a new byte array. Now, we've already specified a constant up above, and so we're just going to use our constant of 4096. Now, with our byte array specified, now we need to actually begin reading the file. And when you read things with a file input stream, and when you write things with a file output stream, it writes it byte by byte. So, in order to do that, we need to first set up what our first byte is going to be. So we're going to create a little variable called bytes read, and we're going to pre-initialize it to -1. And you'll see in a moment why that's important. We're basically going to wrap this in a while loop, and in our while loop, we're going to start reading from the input stream. And we'll say input stream read, and we're going to pass the input stream our buffer, our image buffer. Okay, now when we do image read, what you'll find is that the read method, it returns an int. And so this is where we're going to assign what it reads to our bytes read. Now, at this point, the code is not at all recognizable by the while loop, because the while loop requires a Boolean variable. And the way we get that Boolean is we say it's not equal to -1. So if the image, when it reads it, if it's not equal to -1, then it'll continue. But if it is equal to -1, then it'll exit out of the while loop. Okay, so we have our output. We have our input being read now, and we need to copy the file, so to speak. And so we're going to use our OS method for our output stream variable, and we're going to call write, and we need to pass in our image buffer, which specifies the size. We need to specify the auth variable and what is being read, which is our bytes read. And that's it. Now we need to go ahead and specify what we're going to do with our stack trace, of course. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the code and see what happens. So we click run. And as you can tell, IntelliJ is trying to build, and in a moment we'll see that it does something. And there we go. It finished the process. So let's go back into our source directory and see what we have. There we go. We have now a second image that it copied from the first. And hopefully it looks like the same handsome, great-looking guy that we saw a moment ago. Yep, there we go. Both images now have been copied using the simple method.